What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Facade. In this week's episode, we are on episode 101. And first of all, last week was the centennial episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I was talking about the top 5 trends that are taking place or that are shaping the real estate industry. This week, before I get into introducing my guest, I just want to do a very quick shout out to Adama. And Adama is based in the Gambia in West Africa. And Adama has sent me a very nice letter. And I just, very grateful for your letter, Adama. And just wanted to give you a quick shout out. So thank you for that. This week, we are talking to Mr. Sam Liebman. Now, Sam is an author and a property investor. He sent me this copy of his book called Harvard Can't Teach What You Learn from the Streets. Now, having read through it, it's a really good book. And it's got some really good exercises or some sort of theories and philosophies and things like that around becoming a property investor. Mostly it's around about building wealth through multifamily. If you are based in the US, then this will all make a huge amount of sense to you. If you're not in the US, there is still a great deal of wisdom from today's talk. So don't switch off just because this isn't in your local market. One of the things I wanted to mention that kind of impressed me was that the foreword for Sam's book is from Curtis Sliwa. Now, Curtis is the founder of the Guardian Angels. And if you're not aware who the Guardian Angels are, they're this group of, some people would call them vigilantes, but the reality is they're a bunch that go out and protect the streets, basically, and keep people safe. And over the years, I can remember my father talking about the Guardian Angels. And what's interesting is Sam grew up with Curtis. And so they grew up on the streets of New York, and they had to figure it out themselves, get street smart, and that's kind of where the book title comes from. Sam has gone on to have a very successful real estate career, and I think you're going to really enjoy today's podcast. One of the quotes that really stood out, and it actually straight away I could relate to it, and it is, this is the new millennium where instant gratification takes too long, and that is very much the kind of the mindset that I have these days about the way people sort of look at the property sector. So for context, by the way, before we get into the episode, just be aware that this podcast was recorded before Russia invaded Ukraine, so there's no mention of it because it hadn't happened when we recorded this. All right. Enough of the intro from me. Let's get into my conversation with Sam Liebman. You are listening to Behind the Facade, and I'm your host, Gavin J. Gallagher. On this podcast, I explore the mental and emotional game often playing out subconsciously both in your mind and the mind of everyone else in the real estate or property investment market. The key to success in this game is to master your mindset and behavior, to take control of your thoughts, your emotions, and most importantly, your ego. Welcome to the show. Sam Liebman, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Gavin. It's a pleasure to be here.
Sam, where in the world are you right now?
I'm in my basement office in Roslyn, New York.
New York, great stuff. I love New York. It's a great city. My brother spent 10 years living in New York, and it was something that I always wanted to do as a teenager growing up. My kind of obsession. I traveled to New York I think it was probably 14 or 15 years of age, and I had never been to America before. And we arrived into Manhattan, and the skyscrapers just blew my mind. And coming from Ireland, where the tallest building was 16 floors, arriving into Fifth Avenue, and you're looking at all of these towers, it's just, it's an amazing place. So it's a real pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Well, now New York, unfortunately, is circling the drain. It's horrible there, what's going on there. And the 16th floor might be ground level because they're building 80-story buildings now. I've been following
what's going on Billionaires Row, and it's like 96 stories and things like that. It's incredible. And I see all these tricks that they use to kind of increase the height, where they use kind of service floors and stuff to basically add floor levels.
Well, community space. Gives you additional FAR. You're allowed to buy what they call inclusionary air rights now. A lot of different stuff to do that. And
Yeah.
technology has increased so much. Me personally, if I was on the 90th floor, I'd be worried about nosebleeds.
Yeah.
And who the hell, God forbid there's a fire or something. I mean, how do you get down? I mean, really,
Yeah. Yeah.
I personally, except for the view, 10th floor or below is fine for me.
Well, it's funny you say that. I lived in Qatar in the Middle East for a year and a half or so, and I lived on the 47th floor of a
Uh-huh.
tower there. And the funny thing is it's not there's no pressure for space there, but the guys that the ruling kind of party, they basically build these towers as a kind of a status symbol for themselves.
Yeah.
And now, 47th floor for a whole year was a great place to live, like beautiful views and things like that. But every time you wanted to go down stairs to kind of get a drink or something like that, it was lift, elevators, and all this kind of stuff. So it does have its drawbacks, all right, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And,
Yeah.
it's just, whatever somebody wants, but you're paying a fortune. I mean, $100 million for
Yeah.
a
For what? Yeah.
3,000 square foot apartment in the sky.
Yeah, that's it. It's a status symbol at the end of the day. It's all about the way people's mind work in terms of. We're going to get into some of that today, as
Yeah.
we were talking about just before we started recording.
Yeah.
Sam, as I normally do, what I like to just do is introduce our guest through. I mean, we're going to get into your book and all that kind of stuff, but just to give people a little context and backstory, can you just kind of give us your early start and how you found yourself into real estate?
Yeah. I mean, basically, I was just a poor kid from Canarsie, Brooklyn, which is a pretty tough neighborhood. I refer to it as the mafia minor leagues. So
Okay.
all the kids that I played with, either their father was connected, they were in jail. We never understood that, but it was a tough place to grow up, and you need to develop street smarts, get your spider sense tingling, knowing when something's not right, and we developed that as a survival technique. And I coupled that with a traditional education, and I worked for accounting. I majored in accounting, became a CPA, and I got a break in 1982. It was a developer, it was a famous lawyer, famous, well-known lawyer, Bob Lieb, who was looking to leave law and start a development company.
Right.
He's looking for a young, energetic guy with accounting experience to grow with. So the name of the company is Mountain Development Corp in New Jersey, which is
Heard
a
that.
pretty
Yeah.
big company now. And it started off with Bob, myself, and a secretary named Sandy in a little office in West Orange. And in 3.5 years grew to about 20 million square feet of office space. And I got what I call my Harvard education there. At 27, I became the CFO, and I got tremendous exposure, which is really important. That you have to be able to have somebody that's going to take you under the wing or mentor you and expose you, bring you to the meetings with the head of
Yeah.
the real estate department, be a fly on the wall, listen, be a sponge. And that's what I was. I was a sponge, and I would read every document. I learned that every document, a lot of it was boilerplate, meaning same document, just put a rider in.
Yeah.
So I would read these leases, and he once gave me a lease for Beecham Pharmaceutical. Remember, I still lived at home. I never saw a lease, and it's the size of War and Peace. And he told me, "Hey, do the escalations." Do the what? And what did I do? I started calling people,
What
lawyers. I
does this
started
mean?
calling, yeah, what the hell is this guy? What's he talking about? And I learned by asking, I made my own team of professionals that I could reach out and talk to. And I recommend that to all young people when they start, to put a team together. Put your assets together so that you have people to call. You can ask these questions. People
Right.
usually charge. People can charge $800 an hour, $500 an hour, but because they like you and they want to mentor you, they'll answer your questions. And I did that. And then I learned to get escalations. Then I read the lease, and I read it again and again and again, and it became. I know one, you know all of them.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
used to. This is a true story. I used to sit at my beach club, and while everybody was, talking about their golf game or whatever, I was reading prospectuses.
Right.
A friend of mine still makes fun of me. I used to read the prospectuses because Mount Development was basically a syndication company where they
Right.
got high net worth individuals to do syndications. They're very successful. And I started reading these prospectuses, and I learned by myself from reading the prospectuses how the deal was done. And
And
I just kept reading different prospectuses, and then I used my own intuition to structure deals as it went on. Then I left Bob because the company was growing so fast. I wanted to be my own boss. So I partnered with Neil Tepper, who was one of my best friends growing up in college. He had bought a small accounting firm. So I joined him. Bob remained a client, and we built an accounting firm, and we represented a lot of people in the real estate industry,
nice.
co-ops, condos, uh, developers. And the way I built the practice was interesting, I think, was I knew that when this is in 80, 85, 86, at time the co-op craze in Manhattan.
Yeah.
So when you convert a building to co-op, you form what's called an apartment corporation. It's a new entity for the shares. And technically, the owner is supposed to be, that apartment corporation is supposed to be independent of the owner.
Yeah.
I said, hey, wow, this is a great way to pick up all these co-ops, because I would go to these law firms and say, they're not independent. You can get in trouble. I had like 30 something of these co-ops, and that built up a practice. They all needed certified audits.
Right. Okay.
And
Interesting.
I built up a practice, and then I built up a lot. And then in 1993, I had a client, the Kinsey Corp. Jim Kinsey, he passed away, unfortunately, but he called me in one day as the accountant, and he said, we're forming a company called Equity Resolutions, and we're going to buy all of the bank's foreclosures. And at
Okay.
that time in 1992, I mean, the banks were inundated with foreclosures.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we were able, so I said to them, I'm listening to syndications. What's that? I said, well, instead of buying two properties or three with your money, you could buy 20. Wow, that sounds great. Till they saw the documents.
Okay.
So I streamlined the documents, and we bought about 30 buildings. Now remember, in that day, our first building, I remember when we closed, September 23rd, 1993. That was the first building. 22 apartments, two stores in a great part of the East Village. $575,000 we paid for that building.
Wow.
It's worth over 15 million now.
Yeah. God, amazing.
And
Yeah.
there's a lot of reasons in my book. Harvey Can't Teach What You Learn from the Streets. I talk about how that happened. It didn't just go up because of one or two. It's all these things that we did to increase property value. To me, the most important thing when you buy a building is to increase property value. That's how you build wealth.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
And the reason I wrote the book is because I really wanted to give back. I mean, I'm done being the richest guy in the cemetery. I don't need that anymore. And it's a creative endeavor to help others. I got sick and tired of the motivational preacher teachers. You see, they never teach you what happens if the deal goes bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't teach you how the car works. They teach you how to sell the car.
Yeah.
So I said I could do something that can really help people and focus on the education, because there is right now lacking the
Yeah.
education.
Yeah. It's all
Many,
inspiration and no
yeah,
kind
I
of
mean,
substance. Yeah.
many people have said to me, I want to get into real estate. I said, why don't you? And 9 out of 10 times the answer is, I wouldn't know where to start.
Yeah.
I'm
So
trying
true.
to I'm trying to give them a place to start. There are no colleges right now that I know that have a 4-year degree in real estate. Do you have any in Ireland?
We have a degree in property economics in
Yeah,
Ireland, and
yeah,
it's
okay. Clear
yeah.
economics. That's not going to teach you, or modeling. That's not going to teach you how to buy a building, of how the guts are, how that works. So I saw a niche in it. I saw what I call them, the motivational preacher teachers trying to just sell you stuff. And I said, let me do something where people can really learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's become a passion. I love talking. I love teaching. I love helping people. The smiles on the young people's face. I'm mentoring. I have another student, a young kid, 22, starting tomorrow for 3 months. As an intern, I'm gonna mentor him. I enjoy it.
Yeah, I can relate because I do something similar, and so it is. It's a kind of a passion, all right. It develops. Just going back, Sam, there's a couple of things that popped into my mind that we should talk about. First of all, working with Bob in Mountain View, like what were the
Mountain
traits?
development, yeah.
Mountain development. What were the traits that you saw in Bob that you tried to emulate yourself? That where the success kind of comes from?
That's a great question. Okay. Well, I looked up to him because this was a top attorney who started big firm. It's still around called Liebman. I forgot the name of it. It's Liebman. He was partners with Killerman, who was the Attorney General. I was being introduced to all these people, but he always used to teach me. He had what I call dictaphone diarrhea. Those times you had dictaphone, he would dictate all of these little memos. I'd come in, there'd be memos on my desk of constantly follow up on this follow. He taught me about the importance of follow up. He taught me to open my eyes and go into a building. What do you see? And it could be a dirty ashtray.
Yeah.
Anything.
Just attention to detail. Yeah.
Attention to detail. Do things the right way. Okay. Never try to, when you do a deal, make sure it's fair. Leave something for the other guy. But know your stuff. All the time, know your stuff. He would say on the lease, what about this? What about that? I have to go back and look at that,
Yeah.
He was a tough guy, don't get me wrong. Moody, tough guy, but a good guy. And he did things the right way. He became a developer, and he didn't really have the nose for develop. He was more of the attorney turned into a developer, taught himself. Had some bad deals that I witnessed and learned from, had a lot of good deals, mostly in office, which is interesting because my background was in office, but I don't want to own any office buildings.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm involved in office here, all right, and it is it's in a difficult place at the moment. It's kind of hard to tell which way it's going to go with COVID, post-COVID.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Do you think there's Armageddon coming like I do for office buildings?
Well, from what I'm looking at the moment, it does seem as though there's a kind of a bifurcation of the market, and there's the really good buildings will continue to have occupiers, but I think anything that's kind of secondary and that's not being properly maintained or updated, I think they could fall off very quickly. And another thing that I'm seeing a lot of is around the whole environmental side of things, ESG and all that. It's if your building is not up to sort of the new standards in terms of environmental sustainability and stuff, very quickly you'll have zero tenants with any interest at all. And so it's and a lot of people suddenly realize that too late, and by that stage the cash flow is gone and they can't raise the money in order to kind of upgrade the building. And so you're stuck in a very difficult position.
You know what the occupancy rate in Manhattan is now? Take a guess.
Oh, geez, I don't know. I mean, I know our business park, it has fallen off a good bit. Yeah.
30%.
30. Wow. Yeah. But then at the same time, I saw Google had signed a big lease last year. And so there is some activity. All right.
I just don't feel that people are going to go back to work more than 65% of what it was. You don't have to live in a city to do business in a city.
That's true.
Because of the pandemic, we are all, look where I am. I mean, I have an office in Atlanta and Texas, but my New York office I closed. I have meetings like this or in Zoom without missing a beat.
Yeah.
And I just don't feel, and if you look at the what I refer to as Armageddon coming for office, because what's going to happen is that, let's say a law firm has 30,000 square feet. When his lease is up or his option, it's time to exercise his options and say, landlord, we got to talk. I don't need 30,000 square feet. I only need 15. Now, the domino effect of that is that the landlord has to retrofit or re-retrofit his space. The bathroom might be on the wrong side. You got to spend money there. And he wasn't I'm not paying $80 a foot. I only want to pay $65 a foot because I get the same space across the street.
Yeah, it is. It's a difficult place. And I've seen some of that taking place where tenants are looking to hand back a portion of their floor and things like that. So yeah, it's something that I'm watching all right carefully. In terms of you mentioned that, there was mistakes made, that Bob made some mistakes. I mean, I've often found that the biggest lessons are always from the mistakes that you made. Are there any sort of good lessons that you can kind of pass on to us that you saw from your work with Bob in the early days?
You want to talk about development deals or management deals, or what type of deals?
Well, development, yeah, if you want to go development, it's an area that I'm
Yeah,
interested
one of the biggest things I see is over projecting what rents you think you can get,
in. Yeah,
and undercutting what you think your expenses will be, especially the taxes when they get reassessed. So if you're doing a construction deal like we've done, and in the middle you have something, I'm sure familiar with this, called the guaranteed maximum contract.
yeah,
So basically, the bank wants to say, that you're going to have all your subs and so forth doing this for a certain price, $30 million to build this building, and each sub signs that, yeah, this is my guaranteed maximum price. But in reality, what happens is the sheetrock subcontractor, all of a sudden, China's buying all the sheetrock, and sheetrock doubles, which happened, by the way, to us when we built the building.
all right,
You're not going to put this guy out of business. You're
yeah,
going to have to work with him. So you have to anticipate all these, especially now with construction prices, doubling basically.
yeah, yeah, and
You
labor
have to,
shortages.
yeah, the mistakes that were made were thinking that not putting in a big enough contingency for what I
On,
call human nature,
yeah,
or things to change. And we all try to do projections on the rosy picture. So the big mistake developers make is not anticipating the what ifs.
yeah,
They just want to put in something that the bank can hold, can do to get your financing. Um, there's also, you have to have the right team. When we developed the project, we built a 21-story building in Manhattan. Um, I made sure that every Wednesday at 4 o'clock, the team, it was mandatory that they be at this meeting in person. So we had, the mechanical contractor, the broker, the architect, you name it, all in one room, and it was mind-boggling how many problems were solved at that meeting.
yeah,
So for instance, uh, let's say the architect says, okay, the city wants us to redo the way that that the ingress or egress comes in. So the architect comes up with a plan, and now the general contractor says, well, I can't get my equipment in to do that. Now if he wasn't there, think about all the time that would be wasted. I
yeah.
got to contact him, send it to him, do all this other stuff.
It's a
The other
collaborative process.
the
Yeah,
other mistake that comes to mind that we made is, we wanted our apartments, because they were luxury condos, to be all special. People can pick out. No, you got to make it idiot proof. What I mean by that is, when you have 100, 200 apartments, you want a plumber to take his wrench, go in there, turn it this way, go to the next floor, turn it this way, turn
yeah.
it this way. You don't want him
Repetition.
to have to go, well, let's see, this floor, I got to turn it this way, then this way. You got to make it idiot proof. So mistakes that were made was trying to make everything so special that the time it needs to do that wasn't anticipated. And remember, if you don't get the sheetrock in time, the painter might be on another job. You might lose your painter, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Everyone's got
It's
a
the
schedule.
knock-on impact. Yeah.
Then the plumber can't come in. So those are the lessons that I saw, which caused uh, tremendous problems and extra costs in projects.
Interesting. And so you decided eventually to kind of go out on your own and to start doing this. I saw you were running your own accounting firm with your partner Tepper. And like, when did it come into your mind that why don't I actually put a development business or a property business together?
I'll tell you what happened. It was a tax season. We were working like animals, really. And I saw what these guys were making, and I
Okay.
said, I'm your score. I felt like a scorekeeper. They're
Yeah.
making millions, and I'm keeping score.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't want to be a scorekeeper anymore. And I learned enough through the accounting, through Bob, to say, I think I could do this myself, but I didn't know exactly how to do that. And then what happened was the person I mentioned, Jim Kinsey, called me in one day and said, and I sold them on doing syndications. I had the ability to raise money through clients, through other people. So we had 3 people. We had myself, Jim Kinsey, and another older guy. He fronted the money until the syndication money came in, and we bought about 30 buildings
Yeah.
together. And at that time, I didn't know much about management or development. But what happens is through the years of learning now the management from somebody and learning development, I now mastered and learned the skills that I didn't have at the time.
Right.
And that's why I tell young people to partner with people that have skills that you don't, and then learn their skills, and then you can go out on your own.
Yeah, it's
So,
so
and I
true.
also wanted support. I didn't want to be the guy that does everything. You can't. So that partnership did very well for a time. Then Jim and the fella didn't get along, so we bought each other out. Everybody did very well. And then I went into Texas in 2008 on my own, formed a fund called the Rolling Cash Opportunity Fund. And now I knew about development. I knew about management. I knew about syndications. And we formed a fund. Why did I form a fund? Because I didn't want to now have a building. Okay, 20 people put in $10 million. I wanted to have the money ahead of time. And I didn't have the address of the building that I wanted to buy, but I knew the type of building. So
Right.
all our investors said, well, you're not going to do industrial. You're not going to build schools, but you can do, office buildings. You can do residential. So the money was there, and I, as the general partner, I was in charge of finding the deal and saying this is right for our fund, and we did very well.
Yeah, I'd say so. Texas in 2008 would have been pretty good pricing.
Sure was.
Sure was. And tell me this, in terms of your own habits and behaviors, like what would you say has been the biggest benefit in terms of, your success, and what have you identified as kind of the key traits that have made the difference?
This is what I tell every young person: master the fundamentals. Don't do not shortcut due diligence. Learn to master the fundamentals, and learn to find opportunities overlooked by others. We made a fortune on other people's mistakes. I'll give you a quick example. Let's say you're looking at a setup, an OM, off remembering them from a broker, which is just a litmus test to me
Yeah.
until it's verified. But you go and you do your analytical due diligence, and you find out that the water and sewer for 150 units is, let's say, $100,000 a year. But that's really a lot. It should be maybe 80. Automatically, I know water leaks are there.
Right. From
Now,
your.
if I can save $10,000 a year on just expenses, $10,000 a year, and it's a 5 cap environment,
That's 20. Yeah.
that's
200
$200,000.
of
You
extra value.
increase the value of that building $200,000, and that's what I try to tell people that don't understand the cap rate, how it works. So the next day, if you were going to underwrite for a refinance, you would value that 200. You made 200,000. That's just on $10,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've had buildings where because you see opportunities overlooked by others. There's ways. If you increase revenue $1 or decrease operations $1, has the exact same effect on net operating income,
Yeah.
which you use to increase property value. Increasing property value is how you build wealth. And there is a big difference between being rich and being wealthy.
Mm.
Chris Rock said it best. He said, Shaq, I don't know if people are familiar, Shaquille O'Neal,
yeah.
He's rich, but the guy who signs his check is wealthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm wealthy by owning a large asset base that increases annually and over time. That's the key to building wealth. Now, flipping houses and owning a 2-family apartment, house, nothing wrong with it. But where's the large asset base?
Yeah.
What can you do to that 2-family house to really make it better? Not much. But if you have 150, 200, 300 units and learn how to buy those buildings, what do they say? The world is your oyster, something like that.
Yeah. The world.
Right. So I focus on, and the book focuses on ways to build wealth. And to do that, you have to be really educated. You have to be experienced. You have to find opportunities overlooked by others. Also, identify potential problems that are overlooked by others.
Yeah.
That's why I say don't get emotional about real estate. Don't look at the curb appeal. It's numbers.
Yeah. Yeah.
To me, it's all numbers. Yeah.
Well, let's just get into your book now. I mean, and thank you for the copy. The first chapter immediately stands out to me because everyone who listens to me on social media will know that I talk about instant gratification, and your chapter is "Welcome to the New Millennium, where instant gratification takes too long." And it totally resonates because I can see it nowadays. Everybody, they're all talking about cryptocurrencies and all this kind of stuff, and the reality is it's not always so. You can't predict necessarily what's going to happen in the future, whereas having 200 apartments or something like that, it's a steady, methodical increase in value that you can do over time, and it's likely to kind of stand the test of time. Well, it remains to be seen. Another thing that I found interesting is the foreword from Curtis Sliwa of the Guardian Angels. So tell us, how do you know Curtis?
Are you familiar with them?
Yeah, well, the Guardian Angels. Yeah, my
Okay.
dad used to tell me about the Guardian Angels back in
in
Los
the book,
Angeles.
in the forward, he talks about it. So I was, I was about 6 years old. He was almost 8, 2 years, a little 2 years older, and we were on Remsen Avenue where I live. And at that time, we used to buy baseball cards and flip them. Now I somehow had gotten a 1961 Mickey Mantle. And I didn't know what Mickey Mantles were. I didn't know anything. So some kid traded me a stack of cards about this big
For that.
for that Mickey Mantle. I thought, oh, and I pulled over on this guy. And I had these cards, and I used to watch the older kids flip. And Curtis was very good. He'd wipe out all the kids. Me being me at 6 years old, I challenged him. I said, I challenge you. And he's like, hey, you shrimp, go away. What's the matter? You afraid? So I finally said, he finally said, oh, okay, kid. So we flipped the cards, and I'd say under 5 minutes, I'm wiped out.
Oh, God.
Now, I'm getting mad. I started kicking him and chasing him and try to punch him, and he's dodging. He's dodging me like he's a halfback for in the NFL. And I'm just going after him, so angry till I was exhausted. And I went back. I'm on the steps, and I started crying. And someone taps me on the shoulder. It says, "Hey, Sammy, here's your baseball cards." It was Curtis. That became a friendship that's lasted almost 60 years.
Wow, nice.
So I watched, when we were young, we played stickball all day. We were friends till about 18. I went to college, and he went off to the Bronx, the South Bronx. He was always like a natural leader.
Yeah.
He's a good guy. He always liked, being up in front and so forth, but a really good guy. He taught us at a young age about racism, ahead of his time.
Wow.
He would make all the kids. We used to go around collecting old papers and aluminum cans, and we used to sit to get him to play stickball because he was one of the better players.
Right.
Yeah. I actually have a baseball up there that he signed for me. He said, "My pal, Sam, 3 sue a man," because it was right. So what we would do is every day we had to smash cans for an hour before we can get him to go play stickball. And I speak to him on the board of the Guardian Angels. It's a great organization.
Yeah.
We remain friends. He just ran for mayor of New York City.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Yeah, because I saw there that he didn't win it, but he came in pretty close.
Well, he was the Republican candidate, but
yeah,
8-1 registered Democrats. It's impossible. He did make some noise, but it's impossible to win in New York with what's going on. But he had a radio show, WABC, for 30 years.
Yeah.
And
well, the Guardian Angels
doesn't sleep. He doesn't need sleep.
Yeah, one of those. Yeah,
he's on the trains at 1 a.m, patrolling,
making sure
he's done a lot of good. He's a good guy. And before the pandemic, I was going with him every quarter. We'd have dinner with his wife Nancy, and we would just talk about old times. Like, it was amazing, because you're a public figure. People would come up to him, and he was always nice to people. But with me and him, we're talking about, Vinny Scanzi or something. That remember whatever happened to him. It's nice. And when I asked him, I had I know a lot of other well-known people, but because we grew up, I thought he'd be the perfect person to write the foreword. He was glad to do it. Very
Yeah,
nice.
no, it stood out straight away for me. And just getting back into your book, there's you were talking earlier about psychological due diligence.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that.
Well, I think I coined that phrase. I'm proud of it. And normally, when people mention the word due diligence, it's analytical in nature. Look at the leases, right? Look at the expenses, look at invoices, etc. But there's much more to that. I call it psychological due diligence. There are two personalities to me for every property that should be analyzed. One is the personality of the property. The other one is the personality of the owner.
Yeah.
If real estate's such a great profession, why is the property for sale? There are good reasons, there are bad reasons. Okay. And other things too. What's the reputation? Through my network, as soon as I find out, let me give you an example. As soon as I find out, let's say Joe Blow or Joe whoever, Joe Blow owns this building and it's on the market. I know through my connections that Joe Blow is a great operator. And before he sells a building, he's going to suck every single piece of potential out of that building. So what am I going to do different than what Joe Blow does?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I'll pass on that. Whereas if I know that, and we bought a property like this, that it was owned for years by an older man who passed away, it's owned by three kids who live in three states that are suing each other. They
Right.
never put a dime in the building. Building's what I call a virgin building. It's never been touched. They didn't try to improve the building. That's my kind of guys. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So knowing that's who is the owner, how motivated is he? Is he in financial trouble? How is he in his negotiations and past deals? And the way I do that is I have relationships with title companies, lawyers, and I'll always say, "Do you know who this is?" And I get a lot of information.
Hmm.
And the best information you get is from an employee that was fired.
Yeah, of
You
course.
get those guys; they'll tell you everything that goes on there. That's really important
Yeah.
because
Gives you
remember
an
something:
edge. Yeah.
real estate's a game of hide and seek. Here's how you play. The owner hides every problem with the property, and you have to go seek it and find it. But it's a lot easier to hide a problem than find it,
Yeah.
right? As soon as there's a toxic waste dump under your property, call the broker. Let's get rid of this, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
don't want to be the guy that buys it. So you have to do both analytical and psychological due diligence. In the book, it's a whole chapter of all these things from experience of how to uncover this stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting.
Very useful.
Yeah, I mean, very useful is right. And it's funny you say when you said that, something immediately popped into my mind about psychological due diligence. I think it's important to carry out psychological due diligence on your own mindset as well at the outset when you're starting your career, because as I was saying, I find that there's two types of personality. You're either a gambler or you're an analyst. And the gambler will speculate and make these kind of crazy deals that, might be very risky. But an analyst, on the other hand, will often just sit on the sidelines and they analyze the deal to bits, but they never take any action. And you have to find some way to kind of like slide either into the middle of those extremes. And have you done that kind of analysis before?
That is really a great point. So in the book, I talk about this. When I was a little younger and the kids were growing up, we had a pool, a community pool. And I just noticed when the kids were learning to swim, there were three types of kids. There's the first one that puts his foot in the water and runs away. The second kid puts his foot in the water, then he puts his other foot in the water, and then he's in. And there's the third kid who just dives in.
Yeah.
And I think that's a hologram of how they're going to be in almost anything in their life. We're
Yeah.
all wired differently. And if you can understand how you're wired, very important to your point.
Yeah.
So we have to all look at ourselves. When I interview these kids to mentor, I ask them, where do you want to be? Where do you want to go? Like one kid, I remember he went to Wisconsin, great school, and he mentioned he majored in financial planning. And, the kid would just sit there. He didn't have what I call bubbling personality. He would talk more of the analytical, that I could show clients how to do this. So I said, what do you do? Well, I want to have my own firm. I said, but understand, when you have your own firm, you need sales skills.
Mm.
You have those sales skills. No, I don't like selling.
You
So
better
then,
get
to be
partner
in
up.
your firm, you have to be able to get clients. You have to. I try to use that, just to your point, to let him know. I want you to think about where you're strong, where you're not so strong, and go there. Why would you want to go to a place where you're not going to be at your strength? So I try to identify the
Mm.
pluses and minuses, and guide people that way.
Yeah,
You know,
I do. I recommend to anybody who kind of works with me on a kind of mentor level that they should do a psychological or a personality test. And the idea behind it is that when you understand your strengths and weaknesses, you know that there's certain areas that you have shortcomings, and you can go out and partner with somebody who can fill in that kind of gap.
that's what we
Uh,
talked about before. Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. And tell me this: the deals that you're doing these days, you're obviously working with. You're doing syndication and stuff like that still.
Well, we still own over 30 properties. I've owned over 70, and I think I've done new construction, almost everything. Right now, there's tons of money out there, no deals.
Mm.
You really have to be careful. And again, it comes to being able to identify opportunities overlooked by others. I believe, I don't know, you could disagree or not. I believe there's going to be Armageddon in the office and retail sectors. You know,
Retail as well, yeah.
yeah, and I don't see Amazon buying them all.
Hmm. I've
But
been watching the logistics and industrial seems to be just going from
industrial is
strength to
very
strength.
strong, of course, very strong. Now,
Yeah,
industrial wasn't when I started in 2008. You know, I stayed away from industrial because there wasn't big margins. The people paying $7 a foot. You know, it's
yeah,
just
yeah,
so. Yes, industrial is very strong. People are building science labs, science.
yeah. Life sciences is the big thing now. Yeah,
It is, but you know, if that turns around, you're gonna have a big space that you have to retrofit. And what do you do with it?
yeah, yeah,
So, and you know, you take office buildings in, let's say, a market like Texas, where you know the community there is every 3 years, even if they have an option, it's sort of one-sided
yeah.
because the broker comes in, he wants a fee again, even when they have a negotiated deal, they want a new TI, new everything. So, you know, the turnaround is 3 years, and if you got to give them lower rent, TI, etc., I didn't like that. Manhattan
Mm.
was a little different. So you got to look at the very important political climate, especially now. What is the political climate in the state or country? In New York, the political climate towards real estate is just not good.
Right.
Manhattan has an invisible sign. It says 1% is real estate industry, get out. You're not welcome here. Florida and Texas and other states have a
The other.
big invisible sign. Welcome, all 1% is welcome real estate, and you don't have to pay taxes.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Okay.
Yeah,
So Minneapolis, okay, just came up with universal rent control for new buildings.
it's crazy. Yeah, yeah.
9 or 10 projects immediately stopped. And they're crying, we need more rental housing. We need
But
more
then they
affordable
bring in
housing.
these hurdles to it. Yeah.
But who's going to sign a $30, $40 million construction loan when you're capped at one side, but you're not capped on your expenses
Mm.
or your costs? So that's where we are today. It's ever changing. I'm waiting for things to settle down a little bit. We're sort of in a hold. In fact, I have so much capital being thrown at me to be placed. Hardest thing I had to do was say,
No.
guys, no, not right now.
And what do you think the outlook for the market is?
Which sector?
That's the good. I guess that's the question. You think Armageddon in offices, and so what about in the residential side?
Residential is very strong.
Will it
Okay.
stay strong if interest rates increase because of inflation?
It'll stay strong. It won't collapse, but a lot of people lose a lot of money because right now, why is it strong? There's a shortage of rental housing. A lot of the actual people were cost out of houses. It's too expensive, so people are renting.
Yeah.
Also, there's a changing culture for millennials and other younger generations, they don't want to own. They want everything, not to be not right. So there is a change, and there is a tremendous amount of shortage in rental real estate. But we have communities now where I say in the last 3 years, what I did was we have so much equity in the properties. I didn't want to sell. A lot of reasons not to sell, but I refinanced my mortgages. I got 10 years interest only
Wow.
at 2.5% interest fixed.
Wow. Just insane. Yeah.
So that's what they're offering. Fannie, Freddie, insurance companies now. There are a lot more people in the market. The financing is tremendous. And as a rule, I go where the financing is.
Mm-hmm.
I always tease people that on my tax return, when it says profession, I don't put developer, real estate. I put opportunist. I am
Yeah.
an opportunist. That's why I go where the opportunity is. Residential real estate is still, it's good, but the cap rates are less than 3% on some projects now. So
Mm-hmm.
the margin of error is much less, and you're taking on more risk for less reward than ever before. But there is so much money on the sideline. We call it dry powder in the States,
Yeah.
that people are jumping on things. You're getting zero in the bank.
Yeah. That's the
Well,
big
at
worry
least
I
I'll put
see.
it in bricks.
I mean, the thing is I look at the 2006, 2007, the kind of run up to 2008, and I kind of look at today, and you see this frenzy because of the amount of money that's out there, and you have to kind of wonder when there's such a weight of money trying to get into deals, and you can't, and as you said yourself, you can't find any good opportunities. You have to wonder, people are out there overpaying just because of the competition. And at some
Absolutely.
point, there's going to be, the musical chairs will stop.
Great point. In fact, you're a hedge fund, let's say. 50, 100 people working for you. How do you pay those people
Yeah.
if you can't get deal flow? It's all based on fees, right? So you might overpay. You might, as long as you put your projections in there with all your disclaimers and all
Yeah.
your, risk factors and so forth. But it is a game of musical chairs.
That's it.
I have never, people ask me, where do you think real estate's going to go? And the most honest answer is, as Bob Dylan's song is, the answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. Now, I can tell you if the wind blows this way, interest rates go down, interest rates go, and I could tell you what's going to happen then pretty much. If the interest rates go up, if the foreign money, if the dollar gets weaker or stronger, I could tell you what's going to happen. But I can't tell you which way the wind's going to blow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the problem. And I don't think anybody can. I think the most honest answer people can tell you is, I don't know. I just watch the variables.
I think that's the important thing. And what I've sort of learned from my own, like I went through this big kind of collapse in values back in 2008. And I've learned that you can never really predict it, no matter how hard you try and how much you work. But all you can do is basically make sure you're in a position that if the wind does change, that you're not going to be wiped out by it, and just to be slightly conservative on your debt, and never kind of over leverage.
Over leverage is a real problem. I will tell you, on my properties, we are a little more than 50% equity.
Yeah.
And we didn't pull money out. See, my deal with my investors was to, over a 5-year period to a 10-year period, refinance, give them their money back, and clip coupons. And that's what we've achieved. We have a tremendous amount of equity. Now, people always say, why don't you sell? People don't realize that when you did agency money, there's a prepayment penalty called yield maintenance, or worse, defeasance.
Mm.
Means if you sell before, you could pay millions of dollars in prepayment penalties. A lot of people don't even realize that until it's time.
Yeah.
So then you have recapture because of all the depreciation, bonus, etc., that you took, that you have to recapture. So there's a lot of reasons not to sell, or you can't sell.
But the other thing is, if you do sell, what do? You're sitting on lots of cash,
right?
And it's not earning you anything, really.
Right. We always look for doubles with doubles hitters. Did they turn out for home runs? Yes. Did I predict or ever think they would? No. I figured, we would do this, we would do it right. And, My thing in retail, especially when you do retail, all you're doing is buying a return on your investment. Rents
Hmm.
aren't going up. In fact, they're going down. So what we did was I just kept refinancing, not taking money out, and refinancing, and getting a less of a mortgage. That was the plan for
Reduce the
us.
payments all the time. Yeah.
That's right. So, a lot of people just want money, and they'll pull out, they'll leave a good building into an unhealthy building. But if you remember, I talked about the large asset base. If you have a building that's in a great area and you manage it well, why you can't replace it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why would you? There'll be ups, there'll be downs. I mean, I've been through just like you, down times when values went down. I was lucky that when values went down, I jumped in and bought.
Yeah. That's
But
it.
I look at right now. I would say the main thing is interest rates, but the political climate. I really look to states that are growing. When we got into Austin, I knew nothing about Austin, but I knew 200 people a day were moving there.
Yeah. It's
And
insane.
I'm going back to 2007, 8. I saw what was going on there.
They're moving
You
out
know?
of California and into
Oh
Austin.
God,
Yeah.
tremendous migration. Now everyone's moving from New York.
Wow. Yeah.
So there's a lot of reasons. There's a lot. Look, the internet now it's gonna. God knows what it's gonna be in 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just see the habits of people changing, and I just don't see people that are going to go back into the office. I think the office is going to be an amenity.
Mm.
So if you have one big company that says you have to be here every day, or another company that's just as good says only 2 times or 3 times a week, that's going to be an amenity. It's like when I got recruited from Brooklyn College for the accounting firms. Price Waterhouse wanted you during tax season to work every night and Saturday. And Eisner and Lubin, who I took, was 2 nights and Saturday. So
Right.
I can't do that. So I think it's going to turn into an amenity because I think people now are accustomed to working at home, and it's not going to change.
Yeah, I have seen that. What we're seeing is our tenants are putting in gyms, and they're refitting offices, and they're removing the desks, and they're putting in kind of collaboration spaces, and they're turning it into much more of a kind of a
You know,
social
vi-
space. Yeah.
well, social space. There's virusitis. People don't want to. I have a friends of ours. They go out. She wears 3 masks.
Oh, okay. Wow.
It's just people are terrified, and I don't know what's going to happen if the virus stabilizes in Europe. Then we'll let all the Europeans come in. That'll help Times Square, the hotels, help everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I still don't see people getting on a plane and rushing to a meeting with a client anymore when you could do it by Zoom.
Yeah, that's for
And,
sure. I mean, I think
yeah.
business travel probably, although there will be, kind of closing the deal maybe where you want to handshake somebody or whatever. But in terms of the running it along and things like that, there's no need for that in the middle of the deal.
I haven't been in a physical closing in 10 years. They even send a mobile notary to my house to sign the documents.
So you don't have to go
Everything
anywhere.
is done. Everything is done. I loved it. I mean, I hated waiting for a conference room, but there was a camaraderie.
Yeah.
Now, when you do off-market deals, which I try to get, I try to meet the seller. So there's something where I want to meet the seller because I could use my personality. I can sit one-on-one with him and talk to him and say, if he has a tax problem, maybe I could say you need a 1031. I'll give you all the time you want. I'll do something to differentiate myself, make him feel comfortable. That's important when you make a seller feel comfortable that you
Yeah.
can close. You can't do that when you use a broker a lot because they won't let you meet the client and basically you don't know what the heck is going on if you're bidding against yourself or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are times where I probably might get on a plane to meet somebody. There are those times, but they're far and few.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So Sam, I'm just watching the clock. In terms of advice that you would give to a young person, I mean, obviously go read your book, but what would you say the number one piece of advice would be to somebody who's starting out a career in real estate?
I would say to master the fundamentals. Okay, read, listen to different podcasts, learn, and really educate. That's what the kids I'm mentoring is. I'm giving them with the book. And also, I will plug my samliebman.com. We have a website with articles with others, and anybody is welcome to call me with a question. contact with a question, and I'll be more than happy to answer it, to try to help them. Trying to form a community right now, actually, like Clubhouse, where we can get people together with the same questions and have a community to all learn from. That's what I like. I think you don't look at a property and say, oh, it's got a 10% return now, or it's got this. Where are you going to be in 5 years with the property?
Mm-hmm.
And focus on building property value, not just a return. And learn the fundamentals. That's the thing. There are fundamentals,
Get the rent up and the NOI down. Yeah.
Most people who, for instance, want to learn property don't even know the categories that expenses should be put in. When I meet a kid, I swear to you, I give them what I call the 100-question test. It's a test, and I let them, do it. And they all get a 30 on it, which is fine. And then after reading the book or me teaching them, they're now up to 70, 80. And the kids love it because it shows them their improvement. You follow?
Yeah.
What's the biggest thing stopping people? Fear.
Yeah, that's
true. That's why my accountants and lawyers don't buy properties. They advise me, but they don't buy properties. They're afraid. The way to reduce fear is to be totally prepared for any situation that might occur. When you look at a losing Super Bowl team, nothing we tried worked. They were prepared for everything. That's where you need to be.
Mm.
So get a group together of people that know construction, who know accounting, who know other things, and learn from them.
Mm-hmm.
Learn from them. Get a team together. People would love it.
Yeah. And Sam, a final question I ask all of my guests is, and this is slight different version to what I've just asked you about the best advice you ever got. But if you were able to speak to yourself starting out in your career, what advice would you give yourself now, knowing what you know?
Wow. Maybe started earlier.
Yeah. Don't sit in the
sidelines.
sidelines.
My first building when I was like 35. Maybe I had a little fear, so I waited a little long. Worked out, but I would have started earlier in the process of not going through other things. Identified real estate as where I wanted to be. Real estate was the perfect industry for my personality. Bricks don't talk back, if I could, I might have tried to identify. I stayed maybe a little too long doing accounting, be people's scorekeepers. I knew I could do better. That's it. I mean, as far as learning and other things, I did all I could with the resources we had at the time. I didn't have billions of dollars to invest. I didn't have, so, I did as much as I could with what I had. That I can say. But maybe I should have started a couple of years earlier. That would be the only thing. But it worked out.
Thanks, Sam. So, Sam, your book is called Harvard Can't Teach What You Learn from the Streets. Right. I'm going to put a link in the show notes. If anyone wanted to...
SamLiebman.com, and I'd be happy to connect with them.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. SamLiebman.com. I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Been a pleasure.
And you. Thanks so much, Sam. And I wish you the best of luck with the book and with all of your endeavors.
Same thing, and stay in touch.
All right, guys, it's me again. Just before you go, a couple of things. First of all, very quick favor. Please go and leave a review over on whatever podcast platform you're listening in on. Or indeed, if you're watching this on YouTube, then please leave a comment below or like the video or subscribe. If you have any questions or comments or anything like that, please join the Facebook community. And that is called Behind the Facade Community. I'll leave a link in the notes below. Alternatively, you can direct message me on social media. My handle is Gavin J. Gallagher. And don't forget to check out my new property investor readiness test, link below in the show notes. Finally, please check out my website, gavinjgallagher.com, where you can join my tribe. All right, guys, that's all. Go and do something awesome this week, and catch you next week.